Hi, welcome back to Love Fashionably, the podcast. I'm so excited that you have joined me again on this Monday night. I hope, again, as always, that you have had a great start to your week. Want to always start the podcast by thanking BGTV. Whoops, wrong side. I'm losing my Vanna White skills. We changed sets a little bit, so I'm like, I forgot which angle. There we go. For BGTV Studios for hosting our podcast, as always. Be sure to check out bgtvstudios.com. There is a full list and schedule. There are lots of podcasts. It's not just this one. It's not one or two. There are a lot of them that are happening all throughout the week. So be sure to check that out. You can also find there ways to watch. If you're watching right now, then you already know one way at least. But we are always live on Facebook and YouTube at 7 o'clock on Monday nights. But if you ever want to go back and watch them, YouTube is a great way to find where everything's kind of archived. So we started back in February, and all of our podcasts are there where you can go back and watch anything. In February, I will admit, I was like, when I tell people, I'm like, oh, you can go back and watch them. I'm like, but don't watch the first ones because I was still trying to figure this out and I was not very good. So the last ones, maybe like this summer, I'm kind of like starting to find my groove here. So thanks for being with me each and every week. It's been a lot of fun and on this journey, and I'm excited to see where else we go. I'm going to kind of jump a little in tonight. And we're going to talk about a story and a part of the Bible and a character in the Bible you may or may not have ever heard of before. I had not heard of him until just a couple weeks ago, so I'm excited to share about that part. But I'm going to kind of start us off and set us off because I'm basing this whole thing around this kind of quote or line that God will allow you to settle on whatever level you choose to stay at. And that's something you've probably heard me say on here before. It's something that I always like to have in the back of my mind because to keep me pushing forward, because as we go through life, we know that there are always going to be these moments or these crossroad times in our life that we can choose. We can choose to either go backwards to like an old lifestyle. You can choose to stay where you're at. Maybe you've just gotten comfortable or it's just easy, or we can push forward into what else God has for us. And like I said, oftentimes it's just a lot easier to stay put because we know that in order to grow or to go to that next part or to move forward, that a lot of times that it costs a sacrifice of some type. It might be time, it could be money, and it might even be painful. But it's something that, it's just probably going to cost us. And it's something that human nature says no to. And it's just a lot easier to stay where we're at. But as I've mentioned on here, I like to work out. It's something that I've just kind of gotten comfortable with, and I like to do it now. I did not at first, but I've grown to do that. And just kind of as I work out, I have like these little videos that I always play, and they're kind of always teaching as I go through them. And I've always really liked this one part. And they talk about, I've never knew this, I'm not a kinesiology major or anything like that. But they were saying that when you work out, did you know that you are actually causing tiny micro tears in your muscles? And that's what causes you to be sore. Then you kind of recuperate pretty fast. And then that's what allows your muscle to grow. And so in our physical bodies, we go through this hard time and really you've done a good workout when you're sore. Like you're like, yes, like I did something. And we think it's such a good thing in our physical body, but when it comes to our spiritual health and our spiritual growth, so many times we choose not to do that. We choose not to take those tears, those hard times, that resistance. We think that when we go through a hard time, it should just be like bippity boppity boo, magic spell, it's all better. But that's just not how it works. Just like I was saying, with our muscles, with our spiritual muscles, strength will grow when it's only under stress. And it's the same with God. And a lot of the times, again, it's just our feelings. They just tell us it's just easier to stay put. You may have gone on this spiritual journey with God and you had some type of hurt or pain and you just decided, well, you know what? I've done a good job. I'm just going to stay put right here. And that's just not life. I mean, you can, And we're going to see that today in what might happen when you do that. So I kind of talked about this a little bit last time about how life can come at us in pieces. And, God will give us one piece of the puzzle and we won't really see the full picture because he's the only one with the manual. He's the only one that sees our beginning to our end and knows the whole story of our life. And he'll give us a piece of the puzzle and we have to fit it with what we have and just work with what we have until he gives us that next piece. And, I'm a speech therapist and I work a lot on puzzles with kids. And when you're working with the kid and you're trying to teach them how to do a puzzle, if it's, the ones you border first, because if you're not doing the border first, what are you doing? But then also the knob puzzles. And I'm okay, I give a kid a puzzle and they're standing there or sitting there looking at it. They might bang it on the table. And then I have to point on the table. I'm no, it goes right here. And then they'll put it in. And I thought that was so silly, but that God's that's you most of the time. That's us most of the time. He'll give us that piece of the puzzle and we're sitting there I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. And he's it goes right here. And we have to fit it in. And I want us to look at this story in the Bible. You may or may not have ever heard of this character before. And it happens in Genesis. And we're going to start in Genesis 11, 27 through 32. It says, this is the account of Terah's family line. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, in the land of his birth. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, I think I'm saying that right, was Milcah. I don't know. I'm butchering this, but we're going to keep going. She was the daughter of Haran, and the father of Milcah and Azekah. I don't know. We're going with it. Now, Sarai was childless because she had not been able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai. And they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran. Then in Genesis 12, 1 through 5, it says, the Lord said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse. And whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Okay, so a little backstory on a few people in here. So Abram is Abraham. So we know that God changes the names of Abram and Sarah to Abraham and Sarah. And so that's who he's talking about. And Terah is Abraham's father. And so I want to look at him a little bit tonight. So I had never heard of him until just a couple weeks ago. I mean, had no idea this little part of the story, because I've always had that mindset, again, that quote of saying that, God will allow you to settle on whatever level you're at. And looking at Terah, this backsat. So it says that, he took them, that they were supposed to set out and go to Canaan in verses 31 and 32 of chapter 11. But then they came to Haran and they settled there. And then Terah lived 205 more years and he died. And so to go back to the beginning right before that. So you've heard Haran a couple of times. So Haran was Terah's son, but he died. He died early. He had a son named Lot, and then he died. And Terah was traveling, and he comes to the name of a city that was the same name as his son that died. And I can imagine that it probably brought up a lot of pain and a lot of hurt from the past. And instead of continuing on to Canaan, Tehran decided to settle there. It literally says in verse 32, it says they settled there. He settled there. His promise that God had given him was to go to the land of Canaan. We know that Canaan is the promised land. It's the land flowing with milk and honey. It's where Abraham ends up going. And then later on in the Bible, it's where the children of Israel end up. And that is the promise of God. And Tehran had that promise over his life, but the pain and the hurt of the loss in his life caused him to settle in a place that he was never meant for. And then we saw in chapter 12 where Abraham ends up going on to Canaan. And so that promise was a generational promise. It was a promise of nations that was given to Tehran, but because he did not fulfill what God had placed on his life, God found someone else that would do it. And that's the same with us. And, to me, that's kind of a scary thought that God has these great and wonderful plans for my life. But if I'm not walking in a consistent and a constant and consistently walk with him, listening to him, following him, doing what he's asking, and I can miss what all he really wants for my life. And that's kind of the warning that we see here in Genesis. And so in Philippians 3:13 through 14, it says, I don't depend on my own strength to accomplish this. However, I do have one compelling focus. I forget all of the past as I fasten my heart to the future instead. I run straight for the divine invitation of reaching the heavenly goal and gaining the victory prize through the anointing of Jesus. And you've probably heard that because in another version, it says, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. And there's a couple reasons I wanted to bring those verses up. In that first one where he's talking about, I forget all of the past as I fasten my heart to the future instead. And yes, life is full of surprises and twists and turns and exciting things and surprising things and disappointments and loss. And we just live in a broken world. And you're going to encounter it all throughout your life. And it's up to us. God gives us that free will, that choice of will you stay or will you go? I'm not going to sing that song. That song is running in my head. But back to being serious. But no, will you forget the former things and move on into your future that God has for you? That press towards the mark, John Bevere has once said that press towards the mark means to implies there will be resistance or pressure, that there is opposition to knowing God. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, that opposition, that resistance or pressure is what creates strength and allows us to grow and allows us to keep going on this journey with life. A pressure that kind of always makes me think of like a diamond. We know that coal under pressure produces a diamond. Some of the best things in life, that's the one thing that most girls always want and dream of, is that diamond. And it always comes from something that has been under a lot of pressure. And most things in life do come that way. Things that are rewarding, things that are worthwhile, they take a journey. Like we said, it's not like a bippity-boppity-boo type moment. It's not a fantasy. It doesn't happen quick. It's not a magic spell. Good things just take time. Darius Daniels said this. He says, what if God will move heaven and earth for you, but will only give you what you choose to settle for? We have that free will, that choice to choose what God has for us. We can settle. We can take those moments that come, and we can pause. And it's okay to pause. It's okay to settle for a minute. Abraham, in that story in Genesis, we see he settled with his father for a minute. And I think it's okay to do that, because that's where you need those moments of healing. You need those moments and times to kind of get your bearings straight and to get the next piece. We don't just want to keep going forward so fast in life that we leave God behind to either. You have to go at it's a pace, and it's a God pace. And again, it goes back, like I was saying, that puzzle piece, just waiting. You have that one piece, you put it together, you work it, and you work it until you get the next part. And that's what we see here with Abraham, that he was following his father. They settled for a moment, and then God said, it's time to move on. Here's the next piece of the puzzle. It's time for you to move. And what would that look like for us if we lived our lives like that? If we slowed down and we walked and we listened to God, and, we just moved when he said to move, and we kept going forward. We didn't stay stuck, no matter what it might cost us to kind of move out of that spot. What is it that you may be asking God for today, that to get you out of, that you feel like where you're stuck in a moment, you're stuck in a mindset, you're stuck in a situation or something that's happened in your past, or maybe you're just stuck and you're like, I really don't see any way out, and I don't have the next piece of the puzzle. I don't know what to do. Well, you can know that there is peace because he's there with you. And in those moments of confusion and in the middle, that's always the hardest part, is the middle of a journey. I'm filming this early, and a few days after the South Florida Alabama football game. So if you're a football fan, then you know that the middle of that game was not very fun. The first part was good, the last part was good, middle's not fun. And that's how it is a lot of times in life. We get this piece of the puzzle, this advice, this word, this whatever, and we start going on this journey, and the first part is really fun, and ending's really fun because we can see the finish line, and the middle is not fun. But that is where our growth and our strength happens. And so keep pushing, don't stay stuck. Talk to him. He will lead you in the way that he wants you to go. So just trust and have patience in with him, and pack your suitcases, because we can't stay here. We have to get to Canaan. So I hope that encourages you. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tehran before. Like I said, he was a new one for me, but I definitely learned a lot from his life, and I hope that it encourages you as well. Thank you for being here. I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you again next time.